Yeah.
And I knew nothing about Raymond Moody or his book for about another 3 years or so.
Uh-huh.
It was Kenneth Ring who told me about Raymond Moody.
Mm.
I'd never heard of the guy.
Well, when I met Elizabeth Kubler-Ross, it was at a seminar she was giving, and it was in Joplin, and they had expected about 400 or 500 people at this hotel, and we went up there, and there ended up being over 1,000.
Oh, I could believe that. She was such a powerful woman.
They were totally unprepared. I mean, they didn't know what they were going to do with all these people, and they had us crammed in there as tight as you could cram them in, even extending out around the swimming pool. They had to open up the rooms for the motel rooms for the restrooms. And anyway, when she arrived, she said they almost didn't let her in because she was dressed in a T-shirt and jeans.
Right, yeah, that's our dear Elizabeth. Yeah.
I guess she didn't look like this, distinguished woman they were expecting.
Yeah,
and,
she passed
she
over
just got up on the
last
top
year,
of the desk and crossed her legs and began to talk, very down to earth and very natural and approachable.
Oh, yeah.
So I figured if you were in this field, you would have had to have come in contact with her.
Oh, yeah, she's the one who started me.
Well,
and then we had many other interactions after that.
Uh-huh. Okay,
and then one of the life-changing experiences for me was to go and attend her Death and Dying seminar. That was in September. It started September 22nd, 1978.
Well, this was in the 70s.
No, August 22nd, 1978.
Okay, I know it was in the 70s when I went to this one. And it was supposed to be for doctors and caregivers, and everybody was there.
Yeah, I went to the one in Shanti Nilaya in Escondido, California. That was her second one that she'd ever held. And, it was through very miraculous kinds of events that I was able to get there, but I did. And
well, we know nothing is a coincidence.
And of course, that was a biggie for me. And then I began to be able to integrate my own experiences after that, and took off on my own future memory episode. In other words, living the future before it occurred.
Okay,
I lived a whole year before it occurred.
Now we can get into that. Okay. But did you start doing this as a result of the near-death experience? You began seeing the future, or what? Tell us.
I'm not talking about seeing the future. That's clairvoyance. I'm talking about pre-living it.
Okay, that's what I mean.
Very different.
Explain what you're talking about. But it happened as a result of the near-death experiences?
For me, it did.
Yeah.
For me, it did. And we now know that these kinds of episodes do occur for people. They're part of the after effects not only of near-death experiences, but of any kind of impactful, transformational spiritual experience. So any kind of experience that really flips you around, that's a breakthrough experience, that's truly a life-changing experience that is so impactful that there's no such thing as life as always. It just completely changes you.
So you
the after effects of those kinds of things is future. Among the after effects is episodes like future memory.
Yes, so you don't actually have to die. It's just kind of a changing experience.
Right. And Ken Ring at that time, he's one of our pioneers in the field of near-death studies that came after Raymond Moody. He was talking about flash forwards, that experience afterward would get these flashes of the future.
Okay.
And I looked at that and I thought, well, that doesn't really explain it. That just doesn't cover what's going on here, Ken. And he couldn't understand me. So I started looking into it much more deeply because it had occurred to me. It was happening to many other experiencers I knew about.
Okay.
So I decided to do a particular project just on future memory. Did it happen to just people like myself? people who had these sudden spiritual experiences, these very dramatic ones, or are there other circumstances where this can occur? And I found out that a lot of people have them. People have them under people who are dealing with a lot of stress in their life, a lot of sudden changes in their life, things that they can't handle necessarily, will start to have these. Now, what they are, and I'm going to be kind of technical here, but not that technical, I hope.
Okay.
I call future memory a chance to pre-live the future in advance. Now, notice I said pre-live. It's the ability to fully live a given event or sequence of events in subjective reality before it plays out in objective reality. And sometimes it's forgotten by the individual, but not always. And invariably there's a particular cue or clue or something happens afterward that brings it all back. But usually most people remember it, but not everybody.
Uh-huh.
But this pre-happening, this pre-living is so detailed, Dolores, that there is no way to distinguish it from everyday reality while this phenomenon is in progress. In other words, everything, every detail is lived. Each movement, each thought, smell, taste, decision, sight, sound, and everything is pre-lived. It's not just a viewing like clairvoyance or a hearing like clairaudience or a knowing like precognition or a prediction, prophecy. It's not any, and it's not deja vu. People sometimes get it mixed up with deja vu. Deja vu is always past-oriented.
Yeah.
Future memory is always having to do with a future that has not occurred.
Well, so I mean, when it happens, how do you know you're in the future? Is there something that distinguishes it from...
Well, there's a particular pattern I found with the majority of experiencers, whether they be those who had an experience like myself, that is to say, that were turned around by these, really transformational experiences, or people who had gone through many changes in their lives and were sort of, quote-unquote, dealing with it, a lot of stress. So it didn't matter what kind of person.
Yeah.
The majority had a particular pattern. And I talk about this pattern, of course, in my book, Future Memory, and I give the whole sequence of the pattern. The first clue, the physical sensation at onset, is almost always either a rush of heat coupled with a feeling of exhilaration, or somehow there's a lift felt or a ringing sound in people's ears, or somehow they feel themselves being exhilarated. Well, right now, Dolores, before you go any further, right now you know from that the fact that there are physical sensations, that there are chemical changes occurring in the brain.
Yeah.
Right now, you know this is a physical event. This is not imagination. This is not a projection of some kind. This is
it's not an illness. Or
you're not playing games here. This is absolutely physical.
Uh-huh.
And
so the person, you could just be sitting in your house and you suddenly start having these feelings.
And one of the things I found, Dolores, is that these kind of events almost always, not always, but almost always happen when the person is physically engaged in life. In other words, you're not sitting on your bum dreaming, or you're not, doing the usual meditative, quiet kind of thing. You're walking, or you're vacuuming, or you're doing dishes, or you're engaged in some kind of activity.
Yeah.
And almost always it involves mundane events. Once in a while, it would be a major event that the person would pre-live, but the majority of cases were always mundane events. Let me give you an example.
Yeah,
let me give you an example of one of my own.
Example. Okay, go ahead.
Yeah, I would. This is when my husband and I were living in Williamsburg, Virginia.
Yeah.
And let's see, what is it? Maybe 20 years ago now. Anyway, a while ago. And I was in the kitchen. He was in the dining room. He was reading the paper. He had the paper held up. And I went over to pick up the lunch dishes and turned around, was walking into the kitchen. I was holding the lunch dishes, and all of a sudden, the phone rang. We had a wall phone in the kitchen. The phone rang.
Yeah.
I went over to the phone. I answered the phone. And there was a man on the phone who had just come into town. He was the head of the promotional division of the company my husband worked for.
Yeah.
And he said, I hear you would like to join forces with us and hand out flyers and be part of our promotion on this next big sale. And I said, yes, I would like to do that. I had some time, free, and I would like to, just be involved in this. And he says, okay, meet us at 7 o'clock tonight at Howard Johnson's restaurant, and I'll explain all the details then.
Okay.
So I busied myself through the day, and I vacuumed, and I did all kinds of things, and I was ready at 7 o'clock, and I drove over to Howard Johnson's, parked the car, got out of the car, went inside Howard Johnson's, and went through these big, huge glass doors, went inside, couldn't find this guy.
Uh-huh.
So I turned around, and when I turned around, there he was walking in the doors surrounded by a bevy of women. Bingo! And then it was over, and I'm still standing there in the kitchen, and I'm holding the lunch and dishes, and I'm wondering, what happened? What happened? This was so physical, Dolores.
So it was like
I had done it.
Was it kind of like what I call slipping into another dimension and then coming back or something?
No. I was in this dimension. I knew I was in this dimension. It was 100% physical reality, and I knew it was physical, and I physically did it. And, I went onto the kitchen counter. Excuse me, I put the plates down and wondered about this. Well, I guess maybe a week later, I was just walking by the kitchen, and the phone rang.
Yeah.
And I answered the phone, and there was this guy who just came into town who was head of the promotional part of my husband's business, and he said, well, I just got into town, and I heard that you wanted to take part in handing out flyers in our new promotion for our new sale. Why don't you come to Howard Johnson's restaurant at 7 o'clock tonight? That's when we're having our meeting. I'll explain everything then.
See, that would have been the feeling of deja vu.
And then I busied myself. I vacuumed the house, and I did a lot of things, and I